Hello everybody and welcome to another One Piece review. This week we're looking at chapter 984, otherwise known as the Yamato Identity Revelation chapter. And I kind of have to say that the community was dead on in their speculation about this chapter. Like to the point that even before reading this chapter, you kind of had a really good idea of what it was going to be about. So a big part of me does wonder, man, is this what's going to happen before we get to the One Piece? Like before we know what the treasure is, will the powers of prediction and speculation of the community be so strong that people are going to figure out what the One Piece is before we actually get there? Is Oda going to need a new pair of pants?
This week's cover happened seconds later after the previous one. Not much going on here aside from Lola and Chiffon finally meeting their father for the first time after all those years. So, like, if you don't hate the fact that Pound is still alive, this should technically qualify as an emotional moment. We should be getting a scene, probably next chapter, of the entire Capone Beige family, Lola, Chiffon, Pound, and Pez, embracing each other, just being really happy. And then after that, they should be fleeing Dressrosa because the Marines are after them. And that should lead to this cover story wrapping up pretty soon.
The chapter opens up with page 1 and Ulti in the rubble area, you know, surrounded by the damage that not just Luffy versus Ulti left behind, but also what Ulti riding page 1 down the stairs left behind. And they're surrounded by smile users.
So you know how sometimes you put muzzles on dogs to prevent them from biting? Well, Oda had the creative idea of having a smile user have a dog for a mouth. So it just makes it look like the guy is wearing a dog as a muzzle.
Page 1 says that Luffy's elephant gun loosened up his jaw a little bit, but that was pretty much it, so it's pretty impressive.
And see, this is why I really would have wanted to see how bad or how much damage Raid Suit Sanji was able to deal to page 1. Because that way, depending on how bad page 1 looked, after Sanji landing all those hits, we could have gotten a better estimate about where Raid Suit Sanji actually is. Like, is Raid Suit Sanji below, above, or at the same level as an elephant gun? In other words, is Raid Suit Sanji gear 3rd plus armament hockey level or not? But Oda decided to shift away from that outcome, so we really can't tell. We don't know. Like, the only thing we know for sure is that Raid Suit Sanji did force page 1 into his hybrid form, his strongest form, just like Luffy forced Ulti into her strongest form in the previous chapter. So that has to count for something in regards to Sanji. And speaking of Ulti, what did I tell you? What did I say in the last chapter review? I knew she wasn't KO'd from last week. I was so glad to see her get up in this. Luffy doesn't just tell people they're strong for no reason, if it's not going to matter. So her getting back up in this further supports the speculation that I had about Ulti and the possibility of the rest of the Toby Roppo, plus the Calamities, all being awakened Zoans. It's looking real good for that. Real good for Kaido. It's looking real good for Kaido, I'm not going to lie.
Despite that, though, I do have to mention that if you look at Ulti's mask, it does appear that she's bleeding out of the mouth. So that attack from Yamato actually did cause some damage to her. I like how when she wakes up, her first instinct is to headbutt the doctors that are trying to help her.
And then she gets upset because page 1 runs off, leaving her behind. So she should be right behind him. Nothing that Yamato or Luffy did to them was enough to stop them, because they're both up and running.
Then we go over to Luffy gear 3rd versus Yamato, and from what we saw, the fight looked pretty even. Like, I know Luffy's not in gear 4th, and there was a moment, a panel, where we actually see Yamato kind of trembling, holding the club, but at the same time, like, Yamato was doing a pretty good job, I think, at keeping up with Luffy. And it's more of a just kind of leave me alone type of a fight, instead of a serious fight. Because Luffy knows, from last chapter, he said that he knows that Yamato doesn't mean any harm. Luffy charges up a punch towards Yamato. Yamato attempts to block that punch with a foot, and I kind of want to know if that attack had Rio, because the blast from the clash is so big that it opens up a hole in the ceiling, and that's how they're able to get to the attic.
Then we go over to the main hall where Momonosuke's crucifixion is about to take place, and something very interesting is happening here. So as Orochi is telling the Beast Pirates how it was that Momonosuke got there, how he jumped 20 years into the future because of his mother, Toki, it doesn't seem like the Beast Pirates are believing him. I'm going to read you this dialogue, right? So the Beast Pirates are hearing what Orochi says, and one of them says, is that even possible? Like, are you for real? Like, you can find little kids with top knots all over the place. So some of them think that Momonosuke is a fake. So I'm wondering if what Oda is trying to set up with this scene here is for the Beast Pirates to doubt Orochi, so that eventually some of them turn against him, because it's like he's just doing all this as a farce. Like, this little kid is a fake. All this stuff about the Kozuki clan is a lie. What's going on with Orochi? He's going crazy. Jinbei finally got a convincing disguise. Last time we saw him along with Robin, he was kind of not wearing a disguise at all. Like, he had a beast pirate coat, and that was it. He still looked like Jinbei, so he would have gotten found out immediately. But now he's disguised as a pleasure there, with his one little horn up. Can't say I blame him, though. Being around Robin dressed like that, it would have happened to anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a bad joke. I'm sorry. We see some of the members of the Alliance in the Great Hall, among them Hyogoro. Another one that stood out was Mr. Sideburns guy that we saw get recruited some time ago. And they're all very internally worried about Momonosuke.
Robin is also pretty worried, so much so that she asks Boss Jinbei, because that's what Robin calls Jinbei, Boss Jinbei, what should we do? And Jinbei says, just hold on a little bit longer. You know, the samurai will start their attack anytime now. So I think for the most part, Oda has made it very clear that Jinbei's kind of like the straw hat who's in charge of the strategy and kind of like trying to get everybody to follow the plan. And I love Robin's acting skills in this. She's like, I can't see anything. Bring that little kid over here so I can torture him. I wonder if she wants them to bring him over so that she can run away with him.
Law tells this masked helmsman character, who by the way we still don't have a name for, to get as close as possible to Onigashima so that he can switch people in. And so he makes this pretty big room that reaches all the way to the island and then slices up the top bit of a cliff so that he can use the rocks to teleport himself, Beppo, Shachi, Penguin, and the rest of the samurai onto the island. And so those are pretty big rocks that he used because after they switch in, you can see that the rocks are damaging the deck of the sub. It's kind of funny in a way. And by the way, the art in that panel of the sub reaching Onigashima from the back looks amazing. It's a really nice set piece. After that, John Bart and the rest of the Heart Pirates leave. There's really not a way they can stay since the whirlpool current is too strong. And this is why I'm actually curious, like, what happened to Nekomamushi's ship that we saw a couple of chapters ago? Because we know from Law that you can't really get close to the island on a ship unless it's through the front. Because if you don't take the front entrance, the entire rest of the island is surrounded by whirlpools. So I'm guessing that Neko's plan was to dock the ship in one of the ports of the main island, like in Udon or Hakumai, and then make Marco carry them all the way, like fly them all the way to Onigashima. So imagine having to carry that big of a lasagna-loving cat plus Izo all that way. No wonder why Marco dropped Nekomamushi like a turd. So we learn that Nekomamushi's arm that he lost because of what Jack did in Zou has been modified and now has 2 gun barrels sticking out of it. I'm assuming it was Izo who gave him the upgrade. Izo looks pretty similar, to be honest, to how he looked 2 years ago. Still has the 2 pistols there, and he's rocking a new outfit, cape and kimono, and he has a new scar over his eye, which I think he probably got during the Payback War, fighting the Blackbeard pirates.
I've said this before, but I'll repeat it. Izo hasn't been to Wano in 30 years. 30 years ago, that's when Izo left Wano with Oden. So that's a really long time not to see a sibling. So we get the Izo and Kiku reunion, and unfortunately, Oda decides to zoom out from that panel of that reunion. So I kind of wish that he would have dedicated a standard-sized panel to the 2 siblings reuniting. They're like really tiny in that panel. So I do think that the moment merited a close-up. Now in that scene, Marco says that he spotted a shadow moving along the water, and I think the most obvious assumption to what that could be is that it's Perorin with the candy sea slug. However, part of me does hope that it's something a little bit more surprising, like maybe it's an unexpected ally. Maybe it's Tama trying to sail her way from the main island over to Onigashima. Maybe it's a marine. Maybe the marines actually did send an admiral. Maybe it's Aokiji riding his bicycle. Law says that there's 2 entrances there and that the one at the top should be the one to lead to Kaido. So I'm kind of curious if the group is going to split up and one half is going to take the top entrance and then the other half is going to take the bottom one. And so I'm wondering if one of those paths leads to the road poneglyph. We go back to the main hall and Kaido is ready to make this huge announcement because he finds out from the squirrel smiley that Big Mom is on her way there with a bunch of new homies, and Nami and Carrot and Shinobu should also be on their way there. So everything is going to intersect at that main hall. And so he hears that Lin Lin is on her way, so he's like, okay, I might as well, since she's coming in, I might as well talk to my people about this announcement that I have. By the way, that's a great panel. Awesome panel of Kaido and the Calamities Fukurokuju there as well. But if you look at Orochi, Orochi seems upset that Kaido's trying to steal his spotlight. I was actually surprised how big Jack is in that panel. I mean, he's bigger than King and Queen. So, but Orochi is really, really upset at Kaido. So I'm wondering if Oda is beginning to plant those seeds of resentment between Kaido and Orochi that will eventually, hopefully, lead to a falling out between the two. Kaido says that he's about to explain the new Onigashima Project to his subordinates, and we're not exactly sure what that means, but we do know that it involves Big Mom in some degree, because he was waiting for her to get there. But also, there was a bit of dialogue that suggested that maybe Big Mom and Kaido were thinking about marrying their children to each other. And whether or not that happens after this chapter, it's unclear, but perhaps that's part of this new Onigashima Project. So what do you think this new Onigashima Project is all about? Is this what Kaido meant when he said, like, I want to start the biggest war the world has ever seen? Let me know what you think the new Onigashima Project is down below. Okay, it has to be something big, that's for sure. We go over to the attic where we find out that Yamato is indeed an Oden fan, and Yamato got clobbered. Like, Kaido straight up beat the daylights out of Yamato for wanting to be Kozuki Oden.
Something very important to remember here is that even though Yamato has Oden's logbook that was in Kuri, we pretty much should already know what is written in that book, because Oden narrates what he writes down during the flashback. And so even though the logbook does have some bullet points about his adventures, like, it should not contain information that would be too spoiler heavy. Like, for example, the book doesn't say what the One Piece is. All Oden wrote in the book regarding that was what we learned back in chapter 967. And so the book should be pretty vague in that regard. It should say something like, we learned what the Void Century was, what the Will of D is, and what the ancient weapons were. And in the face of that legendary treasure that was very real indeed, the Pirate King laughed. So I think that's what's written in the logbook. Like, it should be vague enough so that it doesn't compromise the journey that's left. Otherwise, that thing is just a huge book of spoilers. So I think the book is mainly a plot device to explain how Yamato knows so much about Oden. Now, the thing that does concern Yamato's character from the logbook is a line that Oden wrote that says that once upon a time, Wano used to be open to the rest of the world.
It's also important to remember that Rayleigh tells Robin back in Sabaody Archipelago that once they reach Laugh Tale and they find out the truth about the world, their interpretation of that truth might be different than the interpretation that Roger and his crew had. Like, Rayleigh says something like, once you actually get there and you see what it is, your conclusion may be different than the one that we arrived at. So in other words, you have to get to the place to come up with your own conclusion. So based on that claim alone, Oden's logbook can't have that. And I think it's also important to remember that Luffy already knows part of the Oden flashback, because Kinemon told the Straw Hats about Oden's life when they first arrived in Wano. And because of the whole inherited will theme, plus the connections to Oden, this chapter really made me think about the possibility of either Yamato or Momonosuke joining the Straw Hats on their journey all the way to Laugh Tale. I just feel like there has to be an Oden representative there with the Straw Hats once they actually find the treasure. There's actually a Reddit user that I saw that went back to Oden's execution and actually found Yamato standing in the crowd of Oden's execution. Like, this is how detail-oriented One Piece fans are, right? So if you go back to chapter 971, all right, there's a scene where a guard that's there falls into the boiling oil and he essentially burns up. And so he's there on the floor burning up, and in that panel, we see this character that is too tall to fit the panel, so you just get to see, part of his kimono, his body. That's Yamato. That's Yamato. You can tell because the lines, the squiggly lines on his clothing are the same kind of lines that Yamato is wearing right now. So yeah, a fan actually found Yamato at Oden's execution.
Now, back when we first learned what Yamato's name was, I mentioned that it was possible that Oda was drawing inspiration from a famous Japanese prince who was the son of an emperor, and his name was Yamato Takeru. Now, in the stories, Yamato Takeru managed to defeat 2 enemy warriors by disguising himself as a woman, and he did this, he dressed up as a woman at a banquet in his honor, and he killed his enemies there while they were drunk. So now the historical references make even more sense. And because of this historical reference, I did ask myself at first, are we to believe that Yamato is pretending to want to help Luffy? Like, is Yamato trustworthy, essentially, right? Is Yamato really an ally, or is Luffy being set up to be betrayed here? I mean, I think at this point it's pretty clear that Luffy is really good at reading people's intentions and emotions, so I would say no. I don't think Yamato is trying to trick him. I think Luffy would know if that was the case. But let me know what you think. Like, do you think it's too convenient, or no?
Now, regarding Yamato's gender, this is why I'm really glad that I waited. Well, I actually always wait for the official translation, but I'm really specifically glad that I waited for this one because the official translation offers more clarity in terms of what the deal is with Yamato, right? Like, if it weren't for this translation, I would be super confused right now, okay? And so the confusion was, you know, just to clear it up, if you read the other translations, which I did, it's fine, but so essentially the confusion was, so there's 2 definitions of what like Yamato could be representing in this chapter, right? The first one is this. Is Yamato a character who, inspired by Oden, decided to dress up as somebody who represents Oden? Another way of saying it, is Yamato an Oden cosplayer of sorts, right? Is Yamato like a girl on Halloween that dresses up as a male character? That's one option, right? And then the second option is that perhaps Yamato identified as a male herself, right? So those are 2 different things, 2 very different things. The first option has to do with being inspired by somebody and you know, pretending to be them in honor of them, which again, I described this back in the last review with The Mask, right? That's what it represents, somebody who has passed away. And then the second option is about gender identity. A clear example of this gender identity option would be Kiku, right? Because Kiku has said, she said back in Udon, oh, I'm a woman at heart. So that's what we're dealing with. So that's where the confusion is. Where is Yamato? So according to the official translation, from what I understand, in honor of Oden, let me say that again. Yamato is a female that dresses up in honor of Oden. So it doesn't seem like it's a gender identity thing as it is with Kiku, for example. And there's a couple of words, a couple of phrases that get me to think that from the official translation. Again, so Yamato says, well, Kozuki Oden was a man, wasn't he? So I chose to be a man. Notice that she says, I chose. Notice how she doesn't say, deep down, I've always felt like a man. She doesn't say that. She doesn't say what Kiku said. Kiku said, like, I've always felt like I'm a woman at heart. Yamato doesn't say, I'm a man at heart. No, this is a choice. This is something that she decided because she wants to honor Oden's memory. So Yamato never says, this is how I've always felt. No. She says, I admire this one person so much that I want to keep his legacy alive. And so I want to dress in a way that reminds people of that legacy. So you see the difference? At least that's what I understand from reading the official translation. If I get this totally wrong, I apologize. But so far as my understanding is concerned, that is the conclusion that I came up with. And there's another word here or phrase that gets me to think that that's the case. So if you look at the Oda box of Yamato's description, it reads Kaido's daughter, not Kaido's son, and then parentheses, self-styled Kozuki Oden. So it's a style, not a gender identity thing as it is with Kiku. That being said, it's important to remember that One Piece is about inclusivity. This journey is about equality, and I try my best to make this channel about the same thing. You know, equality, because I hate everybody equally, all right? I don't discriminate. I hate everybody as much as I hate myself. and that's a lot.
Now, Ace was 20 years young when he died, and Oden's execution took place 20 years ago. So if Yamato was alive during Oden's execution, that automatically makes Yamato older than Ace by at least a couple years, because Yamato says that she has a pretty clear recollection of Oden's execution, so she couldn't have been a baby back then. I said this last chapter, but I think Kaido's tolerance for Yamato as his child is fascinating. It's such a great aspect to Kaido's character writing-wise, because it makes Kaido more three-dimensional. Like, this thing isn't black and white. It's a gray area that we're getting into here with Kaido as a father. And so I really want to know what this guy's backstory is. You know how much people liked Katakuri, and Katakuri essentially became a fan favorite after his fight with Luffy? I think Oda is going to serve us the same thing here with Kaido. There's just so much complexity here. Like, for example, Yamato admiring Oden so much, I cannot believe that that hasn't been rubbing Orochi the wrong way. And yet, Yamato is still around. So if Orochi ever brought it up to Kaido as a complaint, like if Orochi ever said, yo, your kid can't be going around being an Oden fan like this, I can imagine Kaido telling him, well, that's my kid, you know, only I can discipline my kid, and if you meddle in this, if you get involved, I'm gonna take you out, so stay out of it. Now, since Yamato knows Ace, that automatically takes us back to Otama, so I wonder if Tama knows Yamato, and whether or not she'll play a bigger role than what we've seen so far in the arc. Now, Hitetsu says that Ace arrived in Wano 4 years ago, and so Tama is 8 years old right now, so that would mean that she was 4 when she met Ace. And Hitetsu also says that Ace stayed in Wano for several weeks. Now, in the anime, there's a scene where after Ace helps the people of Amigasa Village, he runs off, kind of like implying that he went on his own little Wano adventure. And again, he was there for several weeks, so that's plenty of time, more than enough time, to run into Yamato. And all of this took place before Ace joined the Whitebeard Pirates, but Kaido and Orochi were already ruling over Wano at this time. Now, if you remember, when Ace first got to Wano, he did notice that the people there were starving. Now, there are several scenes in the anime where Luffy reminds Tama of Ace. And in fact, there's a scene where Ace says the same thing that Luffy tells Tama about making Wano a better place where people can eat. So Ace must have known that Wano was having some serious issues because of Kaido and Orochi. And knowing Ace, knowing what we know about his personality, I'm pretty sure that he must have tried picking a fight with Kaido at one point. Especially because after Ace set sail, he wanted to make a name for himself fighting the big dogs. He wanted to show people who he was and what he was about. So picking a fight with Kaido, knowing his personality and knowing what his goal was, makes perfect sense. And I think this is where he runs into Yamato. If you notice in this chapter, all Yamato wants to do is to talk with Luffy, but Luffy's pretty resistant. And this is kind of like the attitude that reminds Yamato of Ace. So I think that Yamato tried talking some sense into Ace about not fighting Kaido. Now maybe Ace decided to fight against Kaido anyway, and maybe he got defeated, but Kaido, seeing how strong-willed Ace was, he offered Ace a position in his crew. Now Ace being invited into Kaido's crew would make sense, because of not only how strong Ace is, but also because he fits the card theme of Kaido's crew perfectly. Now obviously Ace rejected the offer, so Kaido probably had him locked up, and maybe Yamato helped him escape. The point here is that Ace ended up leaving Wano. Now it's very important to remember that even though Ace left Wano, he had every intention of coming back because of the promise that he made to Tama. So if Yamato knew about Toki's prophecy, like if Yamato had heard about the prophecy about a group of people showing up to take down Kaido and Orochi eventually, maybe she shared that knowledge with Ace, and maybe this helped convince Ace to leave Wano because he wasn't ready to take down Kaido, and maybe Ace had planned his return to coincide with the prophecy in order to help the samurai take down Kaido and Orochi.
Just a quick note, as of right now, it's confirmed that Yamato has both armament and observation haki. We saw her armament last chapter with the Thunder Bagua. We saw the Black Lightning there. That's armament. And then she has observation because she was blocking all of Luffy's hits. Plus, she also says that she knows that Luffy wasn't really taking her seriously, that she was like, oh, like, you're pretty strong and you still haven't gone all out yet, or something along those lines. So, observation plus armament. Also, since she wanted to get Luffy away from the Beast Pirates before revealing her identity, I'm pretty sure that not a whole lot of people in Kaido's crew know that Yamato is actually a girl. I mean, obviously Kaido knows that she's a woman. Orochi must also know because Yamato was inspired by Oden's execution and Yamato was there. So Orochi must have known that Kaido has a daughter. Maybe Fukurokuju, maybe because he was also around during that time in the flashback. But I don't know about the calamities or the rest. I wonder if Big Mom knows. Also, I wonder who Yamato's mother is. She does look a little bit like Black Maria, in a way.
There's another loose end here that I want to mention, and that's what was said before the start of Marineford. If you remember back in Impel Down, Momonga gets some news about Shanks having a run-in with Kaido. Now, according to what is said there, the Marines think that Kaido wants to take advantage of Whitebeard going up against the Marines so that he can come in there and defeat Whitebeard. So the Marines make it seem as if Shanks doesn't interfere, Whitebeard is going to be busy at Marineford, the Marines are going to deal some damage to him, and then Kaido is going to come out of nowhere to take him down once and for all. So it kind of frames Shanks as the protector, the one who's sort of protecting Whitebeard from Kaido, in a sense.
Except that makes no sense anymore, given what we know about Kaido. We know that Kaido has a code, right? We know more about Kaido's personality. Does it really make sense, given what we know, that he would take advantage of a dying Whitebeard to get a win like that? I don't think so. If you remember, back when Oden was able to cut Kaido, Kaido got really upset because the fight wasn't fair. Because Higurashi, the old lady, transformed herself into Momonosuke as a way to distract Oden, and that way Kaido gained the upper hand. And so Kaido was so upset over that he had the old lady killed. So if Kaido did that because the lady interfered, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that he would want to take advantage of the Marines fighting Whitebeard. Also, when we're first introduced to Kaido, he mentions Whitebeard, but he doesn't talk about him as if he were angry at him. He talks about him like if he were sad. He says something like, "Oh man, Whitebeard managed to die." Like he's envious of the fact that he was able to pass away, right? Because that's kind of what Kaido wants. So it's not like he's saying, like at no point in time does Kaido say anything like, "Man, I wish I would have killed him myself." No, nothing that Kaido says in that scene makes me think that he actually wanted to kill Whitebeard, especially because we know that Kaido tends to respect people that are strong, because for the most part, he's pretty disappointed in the world being so weak. Also, Kaido and Whitebeard used to be crewmates, and now that it's been revealed that Yamato knew Ace, it really brings up the question, like, what did Kaido really want at Marineford? And also, why did Shanks go out of his way to stop Kaido from reaching Marineford? That is some juicy, juicy speculation, folks. I'm not saying that Kaido wanted to show up there to save Ace, necessarily, but imagine this, right? Kaido shows up at Marineford, and he's like, what is going on? Like, what? Seriously, Whitebeard? What is going on? My kid is yelling at me over this Ace guy. I know the guy went to Wano at some point, I know that, but now you got all these Marines lined up against him and against you. We really need to figure this out, because my kid won't stop yelling at me. That's gonna do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about the chapter. I don't want to say this, but I do work kinda hard on these videos, so whenever you leave a like, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you for that. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Take care, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.